Hi everyone, Tan out here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of this new Backxwash album, His Happiness Shall Come First, Even Though We Are Suffering. This is a new LP from Canadian rapper and producer, songwriter Backxwash, her fourth full-length LP thus far, which was released on her Bandcamp page this past Halloween. Surprise, considering that some of her more recent stuff has landed on more formal streaming platforms. Even her last one, I Lie Here Buried with My Rings and Dresses. But that's probably because, like her breakthrough album, God Has Nothing to Do with This, there may be some kind of, not totally cleared samples on this record, which you can catch yourself listening to this thing. But what I will confirm about this project is that it is another crushing and direct collection of songs that blend together elements of hip-hop, metal, industrial music. This is maybe Backxwash's heaviest project yet, in fact, but also most versatile thanks to some new production ideas for Backxwash. Like on the track MUZUNGU, where I've never quite heard gospel samples worked into a rap production that was quite this dark. The perks and synths sound so freaky and tortured on this cut, not to mention on top of this you have Backxwash's trademark snarled raps. She also does an amazing job of employing these West African drums and chants on the track JUJU, while still keeping to those booming drums and walls of heavy, distorted tones that kind of define her songs for the most part, make them a more enveloping experience. Also, the appearance from Gais Gouvert on the front end of the track is especially good, one of the best features here. There are other guest appearances that kind of make these tracks as well, like on ZIGOLO, where rappers censor dialogue as well as sadistic, bring various themes of God's wrath, abuse, fear, which are all backed up by Backxwash as well. I would say this track is one of her biggest indulgences in the horrorcore genre, especially with the rising and chilling orchestrations that build up in the final leg. The track is devilish and powerful. There are some vein-popping screams all over NYAMA, thanks to a guest vocal from Pupil Slicer, which gives those droning guitar riffs and pounding drums a certain level of extremity. The lyrics on this track very much match the vibe as well, many of the bars dealing in Backxwash having a gun on her for protection, as a black trans woman who is statistically more likely to suffer a hate crime of some sort. And there have been whiffs of these similarly paranoid themes on previous Backxwash albums, but this track really kind of focuses in on them in a scarily intense way. To compound this, there's the horrifying MUZUNGU, whose beat resembles that of like an early Death Grips production, but maybe with a more metal twist. Backxwash opens things up with a pretty notable Malcolm X quote and kind of launches off of those themes into a few verses about racial hatred, self-hatred, seeing evil in oneself. There are other relatively experimental ideas on the record, though not every one of them pans out in my opinion. There's Nefuiti, for example, whose 3/4 time signature and kind of descending falsetto vocal passages come across a little grating to the point where I think the horror the track is trying to instill doesn't quite land. Though not every moment on this record is out there by Backxwash standards, some of the best tracks kind of feel like a slightly elevated version of things that we've heard in the past. The factory floor drums and impenetrable walls of distortion and bass on KUMOTO make this track maybe the most suffocating industrial hip-hop song Backxwash has ever done. Meanwhile, VIBRANDA, which helps kick the record off, feels like a twisted and demonic prayer, set to these immense classical samples and really epic chord changes on the back end that hit pretty hard, just bringing a sense of urgency and harmony refinement that I haven't heard in a lot of Backxwash tracks previously. But then MUKAZI is maybe the most interesting closer to finish off any Backxwash record so far. It's kind of a sentimental and uplifting moment, a ray of light in a way, where she effectively reflects on everything that has brought her up to this point, the neighborhood she was raised in, friends, family members she's forgiving, as well as her struggles with depression, which are all soundtracked by these really classy old school soul samples. And yeah, this is handily the most touching moment on any Backxwash album so far, and it kind of works perfectly despite this vibe not really being what you typically kind of expect from her. But yeah, overall, pretty impressed with this record. Backxwash comes through with another banger. This one hits hard, it's dark, it's grim. There are some slight improvements in intensity and variety in terms of samples and sound palette and so on and so forth. But in some respects, compositionally, I will say she is painting herself into a bit of a corner even if, again, I do kind of hear these improvements in terms of like lyrical focus and, production ideas and, throwing things for a loop a little bit on the production and emotional end with the closer. So yeah, the songs are solid. The performances and writing are solid. There are enough attempts to kind of switch things up and improve things and advance things to keep things interesting. But could there have been more risks taken across this record, especially since a lot of the sounds on this LP are pretty well established from the previous two Backxwash efforts? Yeah, I think so. Still, even with that being said, I'm feeling a strong 7 to a light 8 on this one. Transition, have you given this record a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Backxwash, forever.